What is going on, UB fans? I'm Mike Bunn, joined along by Maniac, and we're here to talk some UB football. The Bulls coming off a 38-0 loss against number 9 Missouri, but not all is doom and gloom in UB football world as they get ready to take on future MAC member UMass this weekend at UB Stadium. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I said last week, the second that UB football scores one more point, we are going to update that featured video at the beginning of the program. So we are still waiting after that week at Mizzou, unfortunately. But I think we're going to get back on the board against the UMass. So nothing too much to be worried about there.
So we obviously don't want to spend too much time recapping a 38-0 loss to Missouri. But if you have any, what are your takeaways from that game?
My takeaways are obviously, again, did UB get throttled over, a 60-minute game against the top 10 national team? Of course they did. I think that you'd be silly to deny that. But at the end of the day, I think the defense played well at the beginning of the game. I think they came out with a idea of what they wanted to achieve against Mizzou. And again, I said it right in the course of the game. 3 points out of Mizzou on the first 2 drives from them, including a short field, was absolutely a win for UB. Again, they just weren't able to sustain it. You do want to see more out of the offense, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think if they had really tried to maybe uncork the offense, I think they were maybe worried that the game really could have got away from them. I guess that seems to be the idea, because obviously, what do you have to lose down 21-0, 28-0, 31-0, of course. But again, this is a good bounce back opportunity against UMass. I'm not too down on it. And in fact, I'm encouraged about the defense. I'm forget about it and throw the tape out if I'm the offense, and I feel good about it if I'm the defense. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I'll just say my few quick takeaways. First off, Missouri's a SEC school. Take on UB. They're a top 10 team in the nation. They shut out Murray State in their opener 51-0. Now they've shut out UB 38-0. They haven't allowed a point in their last 35 defensive drives. So you're going up against a powerhouse. Tough matchup for UB, especially with a new starting quarterback that is trying to still figure himself out as a passer. Tough defense to go up against. So I'm not too upset from that perspective. I thought the UB defense had some bright moments despite the score. They were on the field a lot. Missouri scored a garbage time touchdown that really honestly had no meaning. They could have ran out the clock. They decided to cover the spread with 31 seconds left. And we'll talk about that in a second.
That spread cover was so inappropriate. I'm not even going to let us wait to talk about that. That spread in a cover was just violently inappropriate. Inside the last minute, could have just kneed on the ball, could have fallen on the ball, but instead I'm seeing like game center updates. A minute 30, they're rushing. 50 seconds, they're rushing. I'm like, what are they trying to prove here?
And they were playing, they were playing for the touchdown. And to me, that happens in college because you put the backups in, and every college coach will be like, well, we want our backups to know that at any given moment, if they're called upon, we need them to score. So going up against UB, we're going to ask Drew Pine, who was a former Notre Dame starting quarterback, transferred to Arizona State, now back up at Missouri, to lead a drive, because what if he's ever called upon when Brady Cook gets hurt or something happens? And you know what? I get it, but it's a bunch of bogus. Like, really what it is, it's college coaches making an excuse for having a lack of sportsmanship.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute lack of sportsmanship. It's exactly like you said. It's the perfect shadow or cover for, making that excuse. And here's the thing. A couple of years ago, or even last year, Michael, he would have had all the excuses in the world, because he would have said, I have to get my team into that top 4 spot. And if I can get an extra 7 points in a win here or there, that might add up to the committee. That might be the difference when it comes down to that December decision-making. But with 12 teams in the playoff, the difference between a 31 or 38-0 win is absolutely not going to be the difference between playoff or not for anybody. It's absolutely not going to be the case.
I'm completely with you. And you know what? I wasn't even surprised Missouri tried to score down the stretch, because you just see this all the time in college football. When Bill O'Brien need the ball with a chance to score late against Florida State in Boston College's opener against Florida State, people are like, oh, this is interesting. This is the NFL thing to do. So I guess sportsmanship is more of a professional thing than a college thing. And you know what? I'm not going to complain too much about it. Missouri thoroughly dominated UB. And, if they want to score a late touchdown to make themselves feel a little bit better about the result, good for them. It doesn't impact UB in any manner outside of the people that put money on the line. But I will say, like, the line being 34.5, I look at it as UB covered that. 31-0 late in the game, backups in. I thought the only disappointing part for UB was that I thought if they were going to lose by 31, it was going to be something like 42-10 or 42-13, where the offense gets you a touchdown or maybe a field goal. But to get shut out, that's the only disappointing thing. But let's move on to UMass. This is an interesting team for several reasons. First off, they're going to be in the MAC a year from now, which is wild because they are a former MAC football member, but then thought, we can't leave the A10. We can't leave the Atlantic 10 because of basketball purposes. Now they're going back on that and basically saying we need the MAC because of the money that you will give our football program. But right now, sitting at 0-2, they're on kind of a MAC tour right now. They opened the season with a 28-14 loss against Eastern Michigan. Last week, 38-23 loss to Toledo. Now they're continuing it, playing UB. They might not be in the MAC, but it feels like they already are, Zach.
Yeah, they're dipping their toes. They may as well play their conference basketball games in Cleveland if they're going to be starting with that football schedule for sure. But yeah, UMass, it feels like they're always all over the board. They're playing crazy games in September. This year, they're dabbling in the MAC, obviously getting ready for that transition. But 1:00 game, it's always that rare. UMass tends to always play that 1:00 game for some reason. So UB's getting that kickoff at home. 0-2 UMass. UB -3.5. My opinion right now on UB, and I'm sure that Vegas kind of feels the same way, is they don't know. They just don't know what they got with this UB team, because I think you'd agree that maybe they looked a little bit ahead of expectation against Lafayette. And again, that's an FCS school. And then I think the offense maybe cued back the worry, and they're not sure what to make of the defense in a 38-0 loss at Mizzou. So they don't really know. They don't have the answer yet. And it's going to be tough to get a real full explanation from this UMass game. So I think that's the explanation of the spread being about 3, 4. But this quarterback, I was going over the phonetics with our legendary guy, Paul Peck.
Interesting
and I
guy.
think it
Very
is
interesting player.
Pumashon is what I heard. Tyson Pumashon for the Massachusetts Minutemen as their quarterback. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because he looks like quite a playmaker. Spent 4 years at Clemson. This is one of those 7 or what? He's in his 6th year.
Yeah, 6 year, all those years at Clemson, then transferred to Georgia Tech, now at UMass.
Yeah, that's quite the ride, I will say. But at the end of the day, you look at a little bit earlier, he went to Clemson. Obviously, the aspirations to start looks like he was behind a guy named Trevor Lawrence for some of that period. No, at least one season. And then he had, DJU for the other one. So went to Georgia Tech, didn't get much burn. Yeah. Now he's playing at UMass. So we'll see. Looks like a rushing threat, 38 carries in 2 games here, Bunt.
Yeah. So, 38 carries for 101 yards and a touchdown so far this season. So that is a lot of carries for a 2-game stretch for a quarterback.
It's not often you see a quarterback, the starting quarterback, also be the short yardage back.
So he's either running a lot or he is running for his life behind their offensive line. Interesting things about this guy. We already mentioned the Clemson, the Georgia Tech connections. This guy was a 3-star recruit out of high school. He had offers from all over the country, some of the best schools in the NCAA, including Florida, Florida State, Michigan, LSU, Ole Miss, Penn State. I could go on and on and on. Last year was 139 to 227 for 1,507 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. This year, a little bit more accurate, 46 to 70, 436. A touchdown and interception, but really not lighting it up from touchdowns. His main guy he's throwing it to in the air is Eastern Washington transfer Jacoby Keeney James. They have no running game so far this season outside of their quarterback. Jalen John averaging just 3.2 yards per carry. So really, this UMass offense is all their quarterback at this point in time. And you mentioned the line 3.5 for UB, obviously being the home team. it plays a role in why they're favored. I think Buffalo would be favored even if this was at Massachusetts. And then ESPN's FPI, it's really early in the year to really rely on their metrics, but gives UB a 63% chance of winning this game. So this is really one the Bulls have to get. If you're thinking bowl eligibility this year and knowing that UConn game might be a toss-up on the road, Buffalo needs to get the W.
Not the mute monster. I'm a little bit staggered here because I remember reading in the press junket when we got this at the presser yesterday with Coach Lembo. But yeah, you really have to think about that and put that into context. This guy in 2 games has thrown it basically 35 times a game, and he's run it 19 times a game. So he's basically making the decision or the effective play with the ball about 50 plus times per game. I mean, a football team's going to get what? Anywhere between 60 to 90 plays a game. So that's over half the plays are ending up in this guy's hands. So this is the guy you got to take out of the game. You got to make him effective. You got to take him out of the rhythm. But yeah, and like you said, UB cannot afford to lose a game. They're favorites in this year. I will say that. I know that it's not the only determinant in what ultimately happens on the field. There could be some other factors in as far as everything goes, but they can't afford to lose a game to 0-2 UMass coming in. And UMass is going to be pissed. I mean, let's face it, they're not happy about how they started the season. 2 losses against MAC teams. They're going to be looking for revenge, but UB's going to need to hold serve here, and they're going to need to do so without some personnel, Michael.
Yeah, and you just hit it. No Nick McMillan on Saturday per Pete Lembo. You are at the presser on Tuesday as you normally are. And that's a big hit for UB. Nick McMillan is expected to be the star of this Bulls offense this year. Got off to a great start in the opener with a 31-yard touchdown reception from CJ Agbana. Had over 70 yards, I believe, 5 receptions. Obviously quiet against Missouri, but everybody on the UB offense was quiet. That was just one of those tough games. Like, we go through the numbers versus Missouri. You don't want to talk about them offensively. CJ Agbana, 6 of 20 for 55 yards and an interception. You thought maybe he'd go on the ground because he had the game with Southeast Missouri State where he ran for nearly 100 yards, but really not much on the ground. 8 carries, 19 yards. Jacques Barksdale, 67 yards on 15 carries. He brought a little bit there. Victor Snow, 4 receptions for 41 yards, and that was really it in the passing game for UB. So what are we going to miss with Nick McMillan? Well, you're missing your best playmaker. That means guys like Taji Johnson and Victor Snow are going to have to step up against UMass on Saturday. And then you also you have Chance Morrow, another big receiver that is looking for an opportunity. Can he make some plays in this contest? So maybe a little bit more running the ball. Maybe you see more LJ Henderson, Jacques Barksdale, and then even Sperling in the backfield for UB against UMass.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this game played more left to right versus vertically down the field, especially with McMillan out of the lineup. Shout out Chris McMullen, got me on the brain there. But yeah, this needs to be a game plan from Pete Lembo where you want to minimize the opportunities that Pumashan is going to have to get in a rhythm. Obviously, you're without one of your top offensive weapons, so it's not like you want to maximize your offensive volume or anything like that. You want to hit for big plays when you can. You want to control the clock. And obviously, you want to get a strong start. I mean, you're going to be at home in front of those fans. Pete Lembo, I know it's coach talk sometimes, but he really does seem like he's dedicated to getting like the game day atmosphere at UB like jacked up, or at least, just getting the stock rising on, how we view, teams coming into, UB Stadium, quote unquote. Because obviously I think it's something that's taken for granted, right? It's not exactly the most threatening atmosphere. It's not exactly something, where they've been packing it out the last half decade. Basically, since Leipold left, there haven't been many intimidating crowds for, opposing teams to come in and face. So again, you got to reinvigorate that fan base. And I think the 2 home games in the first 3 is a good opportunity to do that. And again, I cannot stress that now being 3-4 point favorite over UMass, you got to win here. You got to get to 2-1 so people can be believing. It's not even for like the record's sake. It's really just more for the program's sake, if that makes sense. And of course, like we're saying with Nick McMillan, this is going to fall down to, the depth chart. Lembo was talking all presser about like, this is the opportunity those guys who were behind McMillan all camp have waited for. You know what I mean? They were getting their reps in. They were getting the sidelines, watching the drills, everything like that. They're waiting for the opportunity they waited for. I don't know how long McMillan's going to be out, but Lembo did specify that he basically like sprinted off the field fourth quarter Missouri with his injury. Like, so it was something that was almost like completely unknown to like everyone that was going on. And then it just kind of popped up in the post game sweep. So kind of crazy there. We hope he'll be obviously 100% going into MAC play. I think MAC play is the key there for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, the overall record, I don't know if that's the biggest deal in year one for people.
No issue. Yep.
Yeah, it's more about developing this team and building the type of culture and atmosphere you want in this program. But I think a bowl game could go a tremendous length to trying to bring fans back into this athletic department and supporting them. So I think this is a game you really need to win because UMass they don't have the respect across Division I football that maybe some of the other teams in the MAC that you'll face like Toledo or Miami or Ohio. So you really do need to get a win for respect from the hometown crowd. And then especially with UConn coming up, if you can find a way to get off to a 3-1 start, people are going to – it's not like fans are suddenly going to be like, oh, we're a MAC contender that can win it all. But there will start to be a little bit of optimism of, okay, maybe they are figuring things out and moving in the right direction. And there's some connections between these two schools. So they've actually played each other 14 times, which is kind of crazy. 5 times since 2012 when UMass joined the FBS ranks. UB has won 4 of those 5 games and owns an 8-6 series lead in the all-time series. And then Jake Orlando, tight end for UB, he spent his first 4 years of his college career at UMass. And the current UMass offensive coordinator, Shane Montgomery, was the Buffalo offensive coordinator in 21-22 under Maurice Linguist. So those are some interesting connections in this game. And then we have to shout out our guys, Sean Dolak, whenever we have a chance on bullet points. He had 16 tackles against Missouri on Saturday. That's a career high for him.
Yeah, he was playing with his head fucking on fire out there. And again, I mean, if that like what's the like it's almost like over under a half turnover or maybe like a sack and a half or maybe like 2 tackles for loss. Like it's just he's gonna be like, I mean, it just seems like he's back to the automatic double-digit tackles play record, that he was in 22.
He's simply unbelievable. He's a great player now. Obviously, when you're playing a team like Missouri, you might get a bunch of tackles and maybe you don't have the greatest day because people are struggling around you. Maybe are you cleaning them up at the line of scrimmage or are you tackling 5-10 yards down the field? That makes a difference too. But so far, Sean Dolak has 27 tackles on the season through 2 games. That's an insane number. It's 3rd in the entire country. It leads the MAC. And another number that Buffalo leads the MAC is with 3 interceptions. So this defense is playing pretty well to start the year, all things considered. Now, when you look at the UMass defense, they don't have a sack or interception in their first 2 games. So if there ever was an opponent for the UB offense to maybe find itself against at the D1 level, it might be this Minuteman defense.
Yeah, I was thrown off when I started looking at some of the UMass defensive numbers because the over-under for this game, Mike, is in the mid-40s. Now, I get it. Obviously, you got no McMillan. But, Pumashon has shown that he's capable of putting up a score in the 20s. And UB being favored, I'm surprised that total is so low. But ultimately, yeah, I think that we're going to I think that UB, if you're UB, you want to keep the ball out of Pumashon's hand as much as possible and keep the clock running while you're ahead. So I guess maybe that'll feed into the game as they go there. But yeah, I mean, come on, you got to think like if there was ever a defense you would want to face with backup weapons, coming off a shutout, literally you're, from UB's perspective, it's this UMass team.
Yeah. And let's wrap this up. Keep it a pretty quick show. Before we get to the predictions, I just want to talk maybe 1 or 2 minutes about UMass joining the MAC. I know most of us are all looking at it as a basketball a positive move for the conference, adding a school that's gone to a Final Four, that has some history, has a very accomplished head coach in Frank Martin. But what's your overall opinion about them joining the MAC? I know their fan base is disappointed to be leaving the Atlantic 10, but as a MAC podcast representing UB, how do you feel about them coming to the Mid-American Conference and how it impacts UB going forward?
I like that we're getting a little New England flavor. It kind of reminds you of like adding the Patriots to the AFC East from that vibe. Because, although the MAC kind of has its, niche, so to speak, it's kind of just like Michigan, Ohio, and then UB to me, like obviously. So I like that we're getting a little change up. I like that we're bringing in a little regional action there. Now, again, whether it'll ultimately add to spicy rivalries, whether it'll spicy matchups, that leaves a lot to be seen. But ultimately, I am for the move. I like that we're getting UMass in the MAC. And yeah, ultimately, I mean, just like a lot of UB fans, I mean, I think that, UB fans complain that some stuff has been left on the bone as far as maybe like upgrading the athletic conference over the last couple of years. So hopefully we'll see improvement out of the MAC conference from this move, and we'll see, maybe more attention that way, or UB to continue to progress as a sports school.
Yeah, I'm with you. By the way, you just hit some people's pet peeve by calling it the MAC conference.
Oh, I know.
Mid-American Conference.
Stop being so small ball. Stop being so small ball. And I get that people like I respect that pet peeve, because nobody respects a good pet peeve like I do. Speaking of pet peeves for UB fans, Michael, I know in your bingo card, well, you may have had this. Kyle McCord, top 3 in the college football world in passing yards after 2 weeks.
He is an incredible quarterback. I'm going to be honest. I know some UB fans don't like when we spend a few minutes talking Syracuse, but I'll give it to you right now. Kyle McCord is going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be a starting quarterback at the next level one day, but he is 100% going to be drafted.
That's a Quake take. I love it. That's a Quake take, though.
My only question with Kyle McCord isn't whether or not he's going to be drafted, but how high will he be drafted? I went to the game, Syracuse's opener against Ohio. He was fantastic. Could have thrown for 400 yards, had a big pass called back late, had 4 touchdowns. He tore up Georgia Tech. It's funny. When you go to Ohio State and you have 24 touchdowns and you throw for 3,200 yards, you're horrible. But like anywhere else in the country, that's pretty good numbers. And then you go to Syracuse and you go up against a little bit lesser competition, and you have playmakers like Oronde Gadsden and Trevor Pena, and now suddenly 8 touchdowns, over 700 yards passing. Like, this guy is going to throw for 3,500 yards and 30-plus touchdowns this year. It's going to be insane. Like, and if Syracuse wins 8 or 9 games somehow, it'll be because of him. So I think McCord is a special talent, at least as a pocket passer. Good arm, nice accuracy. He just isn't the type of athlete where you can really move him around too much.
Yeah, the transfer portal activated this era of college football where your program can flash and change in an instant. And I know that people thought it would take longer at Cuse, but now they're looking at 2-0. They got a quarterback in the top 5 in stats, and Fran Brown's looking like a genius. So hopefully we kind of, in a lesser extent, keep that going with UB.
And I think it absolutely can. I think it absolutely can happen with UB. That's part of my thought process now, is you should never be bad for more than 2 or 3 years in a row.
Rebuilding doesn't exist anymore in college football.
Because you can't afford to rebuild. Because if you're in a long-term philosophy, you're going to be losing your guys constantly, and you're just going to be stuck in a losing pattern. It's one of those like pros and cons to like college football and college sports in general. It used to be nice knowing, okay, we got this great recruiting class. These guys in 2-3 years, they're going to be unbelievable. Then we're going to get these young guys behind them. We're going to redshirt them, and we're going to start this string of continuity and consistency. And it was a nice thing to sell when your team was losing, because you could go 3 years and tell a program, just wait till next year. Next year is going to be the year. But now it's like you really have to just constantly get the top.
You can go anywhere. You can go anywhere and have it be the year. So it's like, like it needs to be now. Exactly.
It's hard to sell it's hard to go as a UB go to freshmen and be like, hey, we want you to play right away. Like you're almost better off if you're UB going to the FCS and getting their best players and say, hey, you guys just killed it at Stony Brook or Colgate or whatever school, North Dakota State. They won't transfer North Dakota State to UB, but you know what I'm saying, and be like, hey, you can start here, and that's just the way it's going to be. Because look at Notre Dame; their last two quarterbacks were Sam Hartman, who was a Wake Forest transfer for 5 years, and now they got Riley Leonard from Duke, who was there for 3 years. And it's like, are you ever going to have players at the major level who started their career there and become stars? Maybe like you have the 5-star guys, but if schools like Notre Dame are poaching quarterbacks from the ACC level every year, UB is going to have to start poaching people from other levels as well. So that's another topic for another day. We could go on and on and on and on about that.
Well,
forever,
to put a bow on it, I mean, you want to talk about the golden era of UB athletics, the late 2010s there with those Nate Oates teams, JUCO, right? Like it was they were finding new avenues to get players. Now, were they dropping off money bags? That can be discussed at another length. But with that said, you got to find avenues to make it happen in this new era of college sports.
We'll never know about what you just asked, nor will we ever.
The bag was dropped. The bag was dropped.
You know, another question could be had: if NIL existed prior, would that have ever played out the way it did? So in some ways, UB might have capitalized by NIL, just waiting a few years until after that all played out. But let's get into it, Maniac. The game, Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock, UMass at UB Stadium. We want to see a big crowd. There was over 16,000 on hand for the opener. We want to see another 16,000 plus for a Saturday afternoon contest. UB favored by 3.5 points. What is your prediction for this ball game?
Listen, I think that Lembo shows what Lembo can do in this game. It's going to be a Pete Lembo Bowl. It's going to be a under 24-17 UB. And by the way, I checked the weather. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it should be great at UB Stadium on Saturday. I'm kind of with you. When you see the over under in the mid 40s and UB is favored by 3.5, that kind of indicates Vegas is expecting something like a 24-21 type score. And that sounds fitting for me right now. This UMass team has struggled to score against MAC foes in Eastern Michigan and Toledo. Is UB at the EMU Toledo level right now? Probably not. But is UMass a good enough offense to where they're going to be able to exploit a pretty solid UB defense? I don't think so. So I think UMass is probably going to be around where they have been. So I think that'll happen. I think UB is going to have a little bit more success against a weaker defense. I'm going to go UB 24-21.
All right, let's go. 2-1 Bulls, baby.
Awesome. But Maniac, thanks for joining me tonight. Everybody in UB land, we still have some optimism. It's September. There's reasons for positivity. We're going to try to get Marcus Fuqua on one of these bullet points in the upcoming weeks to kind of recap the first quarter of the season. So stay tuned for that. He's our Trainwreck Sports NIL athlete. So we love to interact and hang out with Marcus. But for everyone watching, let's go Bulls.
Horns up, baby.